Recently, police brutality against Black Americans has gained more attention in the media and society. This was sparked by the deaths of Michael Brown and Eric Gardner and the non indictments of the police officers involved. Many were outraged, which led to protests across the country, including here at UCSD. But has the coverage looked at both sides? Have all voices been heard? Today we have with us Andre Thompson, Leslie Quintanilla, and Alexis Hythe, UCSD students who are actively involved with social justice on campus and in their communities. Thank you guys for being here today.
Thank you.
So, Alexis, I want to ask you, can you give us some background on the police brutality that's happening right now?
I would say in the modern era, police brutality is part of a system that has been rooted in the racism of this country.
Definitely.
And it has been on the rise since, I would say, around the 80s or 90s. You have the end of the war on drugs, and it turns into this beast of police using violence as a tactic, as enforcing the law. And a lot of times it's unwarranted, and a lot of times it's on people who are unarmed.
Definitely.
And that's the monster that we're seeing today is violence against unarmed individuals.
Yeah, I think definitely it's police brutality today is rooted on a historical system of anti-Blackness, particularly built on the foundations of settler colonialism in the U.S. So you have these structures of extermination of the bodies that are not meant to be part of this nationalism called the United States that's rooted in white heteropatriarchy.
Yes,
So definitely we see the modern day technology of anti-Blackness with guns and armed officers that have looked very differently throughout history.
Definitely. Yeah.
I think it also has to do with the fact that the police are trying to get people to go into prisons and trying to direct people towards that way, because when I walk down the street, they don't see me as a UCSD student that got into UCSD, very intelligent. They see me as a Black person that possibly committed a crime. Like that's the first thing that comes to their mind. It's not until they see my student ID that they see that I'm a student, and then all these other mental things start to work. But when they first see me, they don't see me as a student. Possibly they see me as a Black man that possibly committed crimes, and I feel like that's the greater issue.
And the police is an entity of law enforcement and government power. So therefore, those who don't have power cannot be anti-police.
Definitely.
The critique of the police and the police department and police brutality is becoming more dangerous, which is their fear, right? So this critique of the police is actually a very good and correct one, because it's grounded in history, right? And it's grounded in a history of oppression for people of color, and specifically Black folks in the United States. So this is where it gets tricky, right? This is where it gets tricky, where the government starts getting scared.
Right.
So then you scapegoat again, like Andre said, like the folks that are on the receiving end of this oppression. So once you have this rhetoric of anti-police and reverse racism, then you start deflecting that analysis and that critique onto the people themselves, right? So it's not us, we're good, we're good cops, we're good individuals,
Right.
and it's we're not talking about you as an individual, we're talking about you as a system. Exactly. And I think that's the scary part, right? When we start making that the forefront and the focus.
I feel like when it comes to like making it about like the system, it definitely has to be a difference between what is the system and what is the actual police, because I talked to the UCSD like chief of police, and he was talking to me about like, oh, like we're individually we're good and stuff, but I'm just like, listen, it's not about like the individual, because there was individuals in the Nazi Gestapo police I'm sure were pretty good people, I'm sure they were good, but are you gonna agree that was a good system? No. So I feel like once people are able to talk about the police system and how they've turned their backs on the mayor and things like that,
Definitely.
people aren't anti-police. People are anti-police brutality. Like, if something happens to me right now, I'm gonna call the police. Like, I'm not about to just, I'm anti-police, so I'm not gonna call the police to come help. No, I'm not gonna do that. People are against police, but people can also be in support of police as well.
Definitely.
Like I feel like that's the mantra that hasn't been placed in the media, is that people do support police, but they don't support police brutality. So then people say you're anti-police. That doesn't make sense.
I feel like the word anti-police is so insulting.
Yeah.
When people are walking around really experiencing racism and really experiencing something like anti-blackness or anti-queerness and stuff, like people are actually being oppressed. The police are not being oppressed. They're not, unless they have some other kind of intersection in there. Maybe, you know, police of color are experiencing oppression. Right here in San Diego, policemen definitely are, and I've seen that. But you can't say that, like Leslie was saying, like the person in power doesn't get to say, oh, you're being anti whatever towards me. Just because we're pointing out your mistakes and your flaws. And I think that's something that is happening a lot in this country on the individual level and on the systematic level. People are getting so caught up in the, oh, but you're being mean to me, you know, you're anti me, you're attacking me, no, I'm critiquing your ideals and your systems.
Exactly.
You know, like people are so caught up in the, but I'm a good person. It doesn't matter. You're still racist.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. You're still anti-black. It doesn't matter. You're still supporting a system that's tearing other people down. I don't care how nice you are. It's not about, oh, I'm a good person. People are so caught up in that. If you're such a good person, then
You're
take the
gonna do
critique
something.
and educate yourself and make a difference.
Exactly.
And that's how I feel about anti-police.
So, Andre, I was wondering, how did you feel about the non-indictments of the police officers?
Well, I personally felt like really sick and really like demoralized as a person, because you know we were in a board meeting and like we were watching the indictment and just hearing the language that the prosecutor was using to describe the process and how Michael Brown this decision was made. It basically made me feel like no matter what, my life did not matter, because they were using the basis of possibly stolen cigarillos or something, and that was the basis to take somebody's life. And that really bothered me, because even if that was the case, my life shouldn't be worth some stolen goods that weren't even worth like $10. Definitely. You know what I'm saying? So that made me just basically feel like no matter what I do, my life could be taken by the police. And it doesn't matter if I'm doing the right thing, if I'm doing the wrong thing. My life could be taken if I'm unarmed, if I'm not unarmed. And it basically just made me feel like I was unsafe. Like I didn't feel safe on campus, because I knew I had to walk around, to go home, to go to different places. And I wear hoodies a lot. I wear like things that kind of are a part of those little stereotypes that they like to use to look dangerous. And I basically felt like I was, you know, Michael Brown, and that could be me tomorrow.
What are your guys' response to saying that people are using like the race cards in terms of it needs to stop being played or stop being used?
I think that's a really interesting excuse that people use in the media, that to play the race card means to bring up issues around race, when there has already been issues of race throughout history. For example, the law is not neutral. There's a reason why people of color, specifically black folks, continue to be the targets of law and the victims of law, particularly within this indictment. Law and racialization is embedded within the system of law that's not for the favor of people of color. So using the race card is not an actual like occurrence. It's already embedded. We're just making it known that racialization and racism is embedded within the system of judicial law, right? So,
Definitely. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I would say to people who would ask why play the race card, well, who invented the race game?
Thank you. Yeah.
You know,
Like
racism is something that was created.
Exactly.
It was thought of. It was based on theory, and people put it into practice, and it has been embedded in the system of this country since the very beginning. Since the very beginning of this country's existence. Since before this country was an independent country, when this country was just a string of colonies, racism was used as a system to make money off of other people's labor. And so you can't get mad at me for playing the race card
Exactly. It's like-
when you've been playing this game.
Also, a fact of the race card is that like there's statistics to prove it. Like if you look at the Malcolm X grassroots movement, they've compiled a statistic that every 28 hours an unarmed black person is killed by the police, and that is a statistic that's been proven and been has evidence behind it. So I'm not really playing the race card if I have statistical evidence to show you that this is directly targeted towards black people. So I feel like the race card thing is a scapegoat for people to say that, oh well, you know, it's because of this and this. But when you have statistical evidence to prove it, that's where it becomes like you have no argument, you know, because it's not white people that are directly targeted. It's not. It's directly black people. That's the issue.